Man, do we have a lot to do. All I think you'll find compelling and important. This guy, Zohran Mamdani, is that it, Mr. Producer? I got to make sure I learn how to pronounce his name. He's got the Democrat nomination. He is a Islamist who embraces the terror slogan of Hamas. But he doesn't mean to. Who embraces BDS. But he doesn't mean to. He's a full-scale anti-Semite. But he denies it. We're going to get into him, trust me on this. Because if he gets elected, you can say goodbye to New York City, the greatest city in America. It is. I'm a Philadelphian, but we know what's what. So we have to fight this. And can you imagine all the good people leaving New York? And then the certain people who flock into New York again. I'm not talking about Muslims. I'm talking about radical Islamists like the kinds you've seen at Columbia and NYU and all the rest of it. And the media will say, well, that's bigoted. No, it's not bigoted. I didn't attack Muslims. I attacked the Islamists. But we don't really give a damn what the left thinks. They're destroying our country. But here's the deal, folks. I've been behind this microphone almost 25 years. And I learned from the greatest, Rush Limbaugh. It was a close, close friend of mine, as is my brother, Sean Hannity. And there are other great people in this business, too. But I've told you many times, Rush Limbaugh always said, respect your audience. He loved his audience. You, my wonderful audience, he loved you, as I do. But it's important that some policing goes on, that there's some integrity in people who come to conservatives, hardworking men and women, middle class, blue collar, who come to them and lie to them, lie to you, my people and my audience, lie to Rush's old audience or Hannity's audience, lie to Republicans and conservatives and MAGA. Just lie. They conceal who they are. They deceive who they are. I've spent weeks now exposing Chatsworth Carlson. He's a snake. He's a fraud. He's a phony. I have not spent enough time on a true fraudster, Steve Bannon. He's a con man. He's a con artist. You need to know about this man. The media love him. Why? Because he's a leaker. He leaked against President Trump. He leaked against his family when he was at the White House. One of the reasons they kicked his considerable ass out of there is because he's a leaker. They leaked to the left-wing media, as Carlson did and does. That was exposed. Carlson has article after article, text after text, smearing Donald Trump. Not just policy, no, just attacking him as a human being. And Bannon has done the same thing. And it all came to a head now when the president decided, I've got to take out these nuclear sites in Iran. Because, you see, these guys are invested in with newsletters and platforms and God knows what. They're grifters. That's the bottom line. Like Rush used to say, follow the money. Defending Qatar, defending Iran. I don't even think they're really isolationists. I think they embrace our enemies. That they're thoroughly un-American. What explains their conduct? They accused Trump of starting World War III or going to start World War III in complicity in the lead-up to a military operation against the enemy. That's not what red-blooded Americans think. That's not what patriotic Americans think. I want you to listen to this. You draw your own conclusions. The Wrap. Steve Bannon pleads guilty in scheme to steal $15 million from border wall donors. That's you. You. You were the mark. Steve Bannon, a longtime Trump ally and former chief strategist, avoided jail time by pleading guilty Tuesday. This is February 2025. This is a few months ago. To defrauding donors who thought their money was being used to help build a wall at the southern border of the United States. You were the target. Bannon was charged with 5 felony counts and faced up to 15 years in prison. The guilty plea filed in New York criminal court allows Bannon to avoid jail time as long as he does not commit any more crimes. Wow. And the plea comes with a 3-year conditional discharge and waives his right to appeal. Bannon is not required to pay restitution. He was indicted in 2022 on state charges, including money laundering, conspiracy, and fraud, after creating an online fundraising campaign titled We Build the Wall. The donations were promoted to be used to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. According to reports, Bannon and his partners raised over $15 million. I'm just reading the news. I started looking at this. It was unbelievable. If this is the least of it, there's more. This was not the first time Bannon was charged with a defrauding scheme. He was charged in 2020 by federal prosecutors in a different case. However, he was pardoned by Donald Trump during the final hours of his first term. The same Donald Trump who he stabs in the back. Think about that. Politico. Bannon ally Chinese billionaire arrested on fraud charges. How many of you know Chinese billionaires who are arrested on fraud charges? This guy presents himself as the everyday American. Federal prosecutors in New York arrested exiled Chinese billionaire and Steve Bannon ally Wen Gu Wednesday morning, this is 2023, on charges that he and his financier orchestrated a more than $1 billion fraud scheme aimed at Gao's hundreds of thousands of online followers. Gao also goes by the name of Miles Kwok, and his financier were charged in a 12-count indictment with wire fraud, securities fraud, bank fraud, money laundering, and it goes on. In 2020, Bannon was arrested on federal fraud charges while aboard the guy's yacht. Bannon pleaded not guilty, was subsequently pardoned on those charges by former President Donald Trump. I don't know all the ins and outs of this. The article goes on and on and on, but he needed a pardon? So let's just sum this up. The guy gets a pardon on federal charges. The guy pleads guilty to state charges of ripping off average Americans who think they're donating for a wall. Pretty heavy, don't you think? And here's the New York Post. 2021. Trump pardons former White House strategist Steve Bannon. President Trump on Tuesday night pardoned former campaign aide and White House strategist. And, of course, Trump fired him from the White House because he wouldn't stop leaking on his coworkers, apparently like Jared Kushner. And then some guy writes a book, I think his name was Wolf, and he basically accuses Don Jr. of treason. And that was it for Trump. He kicked his fat ass out of the White House. Now, this guy, by the way, has called for the investigation and deportation of Elon Musk. He's called for the investigation of Kayleigh McEnany, Sean Hannity, the Murdochs, and me, meaning he wants us prosecuted and thrown in prison because we support Israel. This guy said today that Israel's not our ally, that we should drop Israel. So like Carlson, they side with the enemy. And they're incessant leakers, like Carlson. They condemn the left-wing media. They are the left-wing media. They work with the left-wing media. Says here, New York Post, Bannon was accused of scamming $1 million from donors to the We Build the Wall GoFundMe campaign launched by U.S. Air Force veteran Brian Kolfage, who lost 3 limbs. This is horrible. Horrible. There seems to be no line this guy won't cross. But this scam was obviously aimed at you. He was busted in August aboard the Lady May, a $28 million yacht owned by Chinese billionaire. I mentioned him before. Bannon's pardon was among a wave of last-minute clemencies the White House was expected to announce ahead of the Biden inauguration. Well, he got it. He got it. It goes on. There's many more details here. We're not going to spend all day on this, but I feel I have a public service responsibility as a Trump supporter, as a MAGA supporter, as a conservative, as a radio host who has spent decades trying to build this movement. You know, Bill Buckley through the John Birch Society out of the conservative movement. These people are not MAGA. They are fake MAGA. They have latched onto this. They're grifters. That's what they are. I know you've heard of them. I know you thought good of them. They're no good. Now, they can come back with all the names and smears, and I'm a Jew, and, you know, Tel Aviv and all that. I don't mind Tel Aviv, Mark. Because I don't hate Israel. But here's the thing, Bannon. You're always going to be a fraud for the rest of your life. That's your legacy. You're a crook. You confess to it to keep your fat ass out of prison. That's what you did. I've never been on a boat with a Chinese billionaire who's charged with crimes either. I've never needed a pardon from President Trump either. There was a great piece written, wish I'd known about it earlier, in The Hill by somebody named John McGillian. Steve Bannon wants you to believe he's a war general for the forgotten man, a blue-collar prophet in cargo pants, ready to torch the global elites on behalf of truckers and farmers. But strip away the flannel and fury, and what you'll find isn't a populist. It's a financier, a Hollywood operator, a man worth $20 million, LARPing as a cold-dusted crusader for the common man. This is the hustle. Bannon talks like a patriot but lives like a prince. He rails against the globalists while building his own global network. He warns you about the machine even as he becomes a vital gear in it. Let's rewind. Before Breitbart, before the War Room podcast, which should be called the Fraud Room, before the MAGA movement and talk of deconstructing the administrative state, Bannon was something far less revolutionary, a banker. And not just any banker. He was a high-powered executive at Goldman Sachs, the very temple of global finance he now pretends to rage against. He didn't walk picket lines. He walked into boardrooms. He advised mergers and helped move capital around like puzzle pieces in the portfolios of the powerful. He got in on the deals most Americans would never even hear about, let alone benefit from. One of those deals, Seinfeld. After leaving Goldman, he began his own firm and worked with Westinghouse to successfully acquire a minority stake in Castle Rock Entertainment, the producer of Seinfeld. As part of that deal, Bannon accepted a stake in the royalties of the show. Holy mackerel. So why do you have to defraud people? Isn't that enough? Translation, every time you laughed at Kramer's entrance, Bannon got richer. While working-class Americans were juggling bills and wondering if they could afford another tank of gas, Bannon was cashing passive income from a sitcom about nothing. And when that well started to run dry, he pivoted to image. He went Hollywood. He did not go as a writer or director, but as a producer, the shadowy figure behind the scenes, raising money, shaping narratives, angling for influence. He produced a slate of forgettable documentaries with big ambitions and little reach, hoping to strike gold or at least strike a nerve. He sniffed around the Vanity Fair circuit, elbowed his way through the fringes of Los Angeles power lunch culture, tried to matter in rooms where creative types mingled with capital, but it didn't stick. He was too blunt, too ideological, too out of place. So he rebranded. When the red carpet didn't welcome, he found an alternative stage. He embraced Carhartt cosplay, grew out the hair, declared himself a champion of the people. But make no mistake, he never stopped living like royalty. His personal life was padded by old Goldman money. The bank account never left Bel Air. The Rolex never came off. He wasn't just out of touch with the working class. He was orbiting them from space, occasionally parachuting down to give a speech about sovereignty and struggle, then retreating back to his fortified compound of fine scotch. Deceit and duplicity aren't bugs in Bannon's matrix. They're part of the operating system. I'm going to take a break and finish the article, and then we're going to move on. But you need to know. You need to know who this fraudster is, who these grifters are, and how they operate. They are the establishment. They are the establishment. And they've been undermining President Trump's administration left and right.